Hi everyone, I'm Nora, and welcome to Dark Justice. Tonight we step behind the glossy facade of wealth and privilege to a home that looked secure, perfect, and utterly ordinary until it was not. This is the story of Joanna Simpson, a 46-year-old mother of two, whose life ended in a way no one could have imagined. On Halloween night in 2010, while children laughed and roamed the streets in costumes, a nightmare unfolded inside a house on Millionaires Row in Ascot, Berkshire. Joanna was beaten to death with a claw hammer by the man she had once married. Her children were in the house. Her body was buried in a pre-dug grave in Windsor Great Park. And the man responsible, a British Airways captain trusted with the safety of hundreds of passengers, would not be convicted of murder. To understand how a life like Joanna's could end this way, we must go back to the beginning, to how she and Robert Brown met, how their lives intertwined, and how pressure and resentment coalesced into violence. Joanna grew up in Yorkshire and the Isle of Man, studied business at the University of Bath, and built a life that centred on her family and their home. She was warm, devoted, and deeply involved in raising her children. Robert Brown was ambitious, a driven pilot from Edinburgh who worked long-haul routes for British Airways. To the outside world, they seemed like the perfect couple. A grand home near Windsor Great Park, two children, a life others envied. They married in February 1999. On paper, it was the start of a new chapter, but not everyone was convinced. Joanna's parents later described Brown as arrogant and rude. From early on, there were warning signs. Joanna would later say she feared they had acted in haste. Long spells away for work created stretches of calm when Brown was absent and tension when he returned. Over the years, arguments about money, control, and resentment over a prenuptial agreement began to fray the relationship. In January 2007, Joanna sought legal advice after an incident in which Brown accused her of infidelity. On one occasion, he reportedly held a knife to her chest. Joanna fled temporarily to the Isle of Man. These moments revealed a darker side to a man who wore a uniform and commanded respect in the skies. Friends later said Joanna seemed more relaxed when Brown was away. The house on Millionaires Row held a quieter life then, but the cracks were deep. Everything came to a head in October 2010. That month, a High Court ruling in another case awarded significant weight to prenuptial agreements, a decision that would sting Brown. He resented what the prenup meant for his hopes of securing part of Joanna's wealth and home. The couple's divorce was due to be finalised in days. For Joanna, it marked a possible new start. For Brown, it felt like the loss of identity and control, and on Halloween night, the consequences of that resentment would be catastrophic. On the afternoon of October 31st, children in Ascot dressed in costumes and rang doorbells, the streets lit with jack-o'-lanterns and candy. Inside the Simpson home, the mood was different. Brown had collected the children after a stay with him. An argument between him and Joanna began at the front door. In the chaos of the confrontation, he retrieved a claw hammer he had hidden in his daughter's school bag, a chilling piece of evidence that would speak to planning and intent. What happened next was brutal. Joanna was struck at least 14 times in the head. The blows were devastating. Her arms displayed defensive injuries. One of those strikes was fatal. The youngest child in a nearby room heard the attack and later recalled hiding in a playroom. After the assault, Brown wrapped Joanna's body and placed it in the boot of his car. He returned to the house, removed the CCTV unit from a wardrobe, told the children to get into the car and drove them to the home of a pregnant girlfriend. He then went to the woods of Windsor Great Park, where, in a grave he had prepared in advance, he placed Joanna's body inside a plastic garden box and buried it. On the morning of November 1st, Brown called the police and reported a serious domestic incident. Officers forced entry into Joanna's house and found blood at the scene. He was taken to Maidenhead Police Station and arrested on suspicion of murder. For a time, Brown remained silent. Later, the weight of evidence, phone records, CCTV, and the discovery of Joanna in the grave would shape a courtroom drama that gripped the nation. The investigation was extensive. Detective Chief Inspector Steve Tolmie led a team of around 100 officers through meticulous inquiries. On November 4th, the police searched Windsor Great Park and recovered Joanna's body from the plastic box she had been placed in. The discovery ended days of agonizing uncertainty for the family and intensified public shock. How could a mother in a well-to-do home be killed so violently while her children were present? How could a man trusted to fly hundreds of people be capable of such an act? In court, prosecutors argued the case of premeditation, the hammer hidden in a school bag, the pre-dug grave, the removal of CCTV, and the attempt to mislead investigators. For them, the sequence of actions painted a picture of chilling calculation. The defense offered a starkly different narrative. Brown's legal team argued that he suffered from an adjustment disorder, severe emotional disturbance tied to the breakdown of the marriage, pressure from work, and the stress of the impending divorce. Their psychiatric evidence said he was impaired at the time, unable fully to control his actions. On May 24, 2011, after hearing both sides, the jury returned a verdict that shocked many. Robert Brown was found not guilty of murder, but guilty of manslaughter by diminished responsibility, along with charges of obstructing a coroner. He was sentenced to 26 years imprisonment. For Joanna's family, the verdict felt like a miscarriage of justice. To them, premeditation was clear, and the sentence felt insufficient for the scale of violence. For the public, the case raised furious debate about mental health defences and how the legal system treats domestic homicide. If you peel back the layers, many themes emerge: control, money, entitlement, and the dangerous conflation of social status with character. Brown resented the prenup that Joanna's parents insisted upon. He felt excluded from the wealth and from control over the house and children. A ruling that strengthened the enforceability of prenups weeks before the murder only deepened his frustration. Joanna had feared him. She had told friends about threats and intimidation, but the image of a privileged family masked a daily reality of fear. On Halloween night, the plan became a reality. Brown did not only kill Joanna, he attempted to erase her, removing CCTV, burying her in a prepared grave, turning off his phone. This was violence combined with an eagerness to control the narrative, to remove traces and move on. For a man who literally spent his life in control of aircraft and flight plans, the need to assert dominance at home had destructive consequences. In the months and years following the trial, Joanna's family channeled grief into advocacy. They established the Joanna Simpson Foundation to support children affected by domestic abuse and homicide and to ensure Joanna's story would not fade. The case also fed national conversations about domestic violence, victim protection, and children living with the aftermath of family trauma. Broader legal change also flowed from public concern. The Police, Crime, Sentencing and Courts Act 2022 introduced new powers allowing the Secretary of State for Justice to block automatic prisoner release in exceptional cases. Joanna's family fought to block Brown's automatic release under these new provisions. In October 2023, the Secretary of State used this power to prevent his automatic release, meaning Brown's future freedom would depend on the parole board's assessment. The family welcomed the decision while expressing ongoing fear about his potential release and concern for other women. The public outcry extended into unique quarters. Joanna's case resonated deeply, drawing attention even from high places. Her story was highlighted by advocates of domestic abuse awareness and referenced by those working to support victims and reform policy. For the family, these gestures have been bittersweet recognition of loss that cannot bring Joanna back, but the deepest hurt remains personal and private. Joanna's children grew up without their mother. They were young when they witnessed the collapse of their family. The images of that night, the knowledge of burial in a park, and the absence of a loved one create wounds that time may never fully heal. While a prison sentence exists for their father, it is small comfort for the daily reality of grief, birthdays without a mother, and the emptiness of a household that will never be the same. This case forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. How many families hide similar nightmares behind respectable doors? How often do warning signs, arguments, accusations, threatening behaviour go unheeded until they culminate in tragedy? How does society weigh mental health, personal responsibility, and the brutal reality of violent intent? Joanna's murder also invites reflection on how the law intervenes in domestic disputes. The diminished responsibility verdict raises complex debates about culpability and the interplay of psychiatric testimony with factual acts of planning. The pre-dug grave, the hidden hammer, the removal of CCTV, and the attempt to mislead investigators are facts that many feel point to premeditation. Yet the jury, weighing expert testimony and legal thresholds, reached a different conclusion. For victims' families, such verdicts can feel like a second violation. There is also the ugly truth about entitlement. Brown's resentment over a prenup and perceived loss of status speaks to a motive rooted in control and perceived injury to ego. When money, power, and the sense of being betrayed converge, they can become a combustible mix. This is not to excuse any behaviour, but to try to understand the psychological currents that push someone to cross the point of no return. Joanna Simpson was more than a victim or a headline. She was a daughter, a mother, a woman who hoped to keep her family together and to build a life in safety. Her death cut through the ordinary textures of domestic life and revealed something horrifying: that evil can wear a uniform, that violence can hide behind privilege, and that sometimes the most dangerous person is the one you trust the most. The aftermath of the case continues to ripple. The Joanna Simpson Foundation works to support children affected by family homicide. The family maintains a public presence in campaigning for victims' rights and better protection. Meanwhile, the legal system's handling of the case continues to provoke debate among lawyers, advocates, and the public. And the children, the most innocent victims in this story, continue their lives with memories that will shape them forever. They were in the house the night their mother died. They were forced into a new reality in which the man they knew, the man in a pilot's uniform, became their family's undoing. For them, justice is not only about prison terms and parole hearings, it is about safety, healing, and the slow work of rebuilding lives from the ashes of trauma. As we close this chapter, there are lessons we can carry forward. The perfect surface can hide the worst danger. Domestic abuse is not always visible. It can be threats, coercion, or psychological control. Children are listening even when adults believe they are not. The law is a blunt instrument that sometimes struggles to capture the emotional and moral complexity of domestic homicide. Finally, victims' voices and families' advocacy matter. They shape public policy and keep painful stories alive so that reforms may follow. Joanna Simpson's life mattered. Her story forces us to confront uncomfortable realities about marriage, control, and the limits of legal redress. It also calls us to protect the vulnerable, to listen more intently to warning signs, and to support the children who survive such horrors. Thank you for watching Dark Justice with Nora. If Joanna's story moved you, share this episode, talk about domestic violence with the people you care about, and consider supporting organizations that help victims and children affected by family violence. Every voice raised in support of survivors matters. Thank you for watching Dark Justice with Nora. If Joanna's story moved you, share this episode, talk about domestic violence, and support those who need a voice. And don't forget, our next case is one of the most shocking stories we've ever covered. Make sure you subscribe, hit the bell icon, and turn on notifications. Because what's coming next will make you question everything you thought you knew about justice. Until next time, I'm Nora, and we'll see you in the shadows.